Welcome back to WC coinworld, and in today's video we are going to take a deep dive into one of the most well-known and widely recognized coins in British numismatic history, the 1967 British one penny. This particular coin holds a special place in the history of UK coinage, not only because it was one of the last pennies produced under the pre-decimal system, but also because it marked the end of an era before the country transitioned to a completely new decimal system in 1971. So today we are going to take an in-depth look at every aspect of this fascinating coin, including its history, design, mintage, details, variations, and collectability. So sit back, relax, and let's explore everything you need to know about the 1967 British one penny. Before we get into the specifics of the 1967 penny, we need to understand the historical background of the British penny itself. The British penny has a long and rich history that dates back over 1,000 years. In fact, the very first English pennies were struck during the reign of King Offa of Mercia in the 8th century. These early pennies were made of silver and were among the most important coins in medieval England. Over time, the British monetary system evolved, and by the late 18th century, pennies were being minted in copper rather than silver. This transition marked the beginning of the modern penny as we know it, which would later be struck in bronze starting in 1860. The bronze penny was introduced during the reign of Queen Victoria, and it continued to be a staple of British coinage for more than a century. The standard design of the British penny featured Britannia, a powerful and symbolic representation of the nation and its maritime strength. The reverse design, with Britannia holding a trident and shield, became a hallmark of British coinage and remained relatively unchanged for decades throughout the reigns of Queen Victoria, King Edward VII, King George V, and King George VI. This classic design persisted with only slight modifications. By the time Queen Elizabeth II ascended to the throne in 1952, the pre-decimal British penny was still an essential part of everyday transactions. The first pennies bearing the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II were introduced in 1953. Following her coronation, these coins continued the traditional design featuring Britannia on the reverse and the Queen's effigy on the obverse. However, as the 1960s progressed, there were increasing discussions about modernizing the UK's currency system and moving toward a decimal-based system instead of the older pound, shillings, and pence structure. The decision to decimalize Britain's currency was officially made in 1966, and the transition was planned for 1971. This meant that the days of the old penny were numbered, as the new decimal penny would be much smaller and part of a completely different system. Despite this, the Royal Mint continued to produce pre-decimal pennies throughout the 1960s, including the 1967 penny, which would go on to become the last official circulation issue of the British pre-decimal penny. Now let's talk about the design of the 1967 British one penny. Like its predecessors, this coin features the iconic image of Britannia seated, facing to the right, holding a trident in her right hand and resting her left hand on a shield which bears the Union Jack design. At her feet, we can see a depiction of the sea with a small ship sailing in the background. This maritime imagery is a nod to Britain's naval power and long history as a dominant seafaring nation. The words "one penny" are inscribed above Britannia, while the date 1967 appears below. Turning to the obverse of the 1967 penny features the first definitive portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Mary Gillick. This portrait shows the young queen wearing a laurel wreath in a neoclassical style. This particular design was used on UK coinage from 1953 until 1967, and it gives the coin a distinct and elegant appearance. Around the portrait, we can see the Latin inscription Elizabeth II Dei Gratia Regina F.D., which translates to Elizabeth II by the grace of God, Queen, Defender of the Faith. The 1967 British one penny was minted in large numbers, as it was intended to be a widely circulated coin, even though decimalization was already on the horizon. The Royal Mint struck millions of these pennies to ensure that there was enough coinage in circulation leading up to the transition period. Because of this, the 1967 penny is one of the most common pre-decimal pennies available today, and it is frequently found in collections of British coins. One interesting aspect of the 1967 penny is that it was technically the last year of issue for the standard circulation penny, but the coin continued to be produced after 1967 in what are known as posthumous restrikes, or fantasy issues. These were not meant for circulation but rather for collectors and special proof sets. However, for the average person in 1967, this penny was just another everyday coin used for common transactions. When it comes to the metal composition, the 1967 British one penny was made of bronze consisting of 97% copper, 2.5% zinc, and 0.5% tin. This composition had been in use since 1860 when bronze replaced the earlier copper pennies. The weight of the coin was approximately 9.45 grams, and it had a diameter of 30.81 millimeters, making it a relatively large coin compared to modern pennies. The size and weight of these pennies are one of the reasons they are so distinctive and nostalgic for collectors today. Another important topic to discuss is whether there were any mint marks or variations for the 1967 penny. Unlike some earlier British coins, the standard 1967 penny does not have a mint mark, as all of these coins were produced by the Royal Mint in London. However, there are proof versions of this coin that were specially struck with higher quality finishes for collectors. These proof coins feature sharper details and a mirror-like surface, making them stand out from the regular circulation strikes. Because the 1967 penny was so widely produced, it is not considered rare in circulated condition. However, uncirculated examples and proof versions can still be valuable to collectors, especially those in pristine condition. Many collectors seek to add the 1967 penny to their collections as a historical piece marking the end of an era in British coinage. Another point of interest is the legacy of the pre-decimal penny. After decimalization in 1971, the old penny was officially withdrawn from circulation and replaced by the new decimal penny, which was much smaller and made of a different metal. However, despite being demonetized, the pre-decimal penny remains one of the most beloved and recognizable coins among collectors and enthusiasts today. If you are looking to collect a 1967 British one penny, you will find that they are relatively easy to obtain due to their high mintage. However, if you are searching for a high-grade uncirculated or proof example, it may take some time and effort to find one at a reasonable price. As always, when collecting coins, it is important to check for authenticity, condition, and any potential varieties that may exist. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the 1967 British one penny. I hope you enjoyed this detailed exploration of its history, design, and significance. If you like this video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to WC coinworld for more in-depth coin-related content. Let me know in the comments if you own a 1967 penny or if you have any other British coins in your collection. I always enjoy hearing from fellow collectors. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.